I like to consider myself a fair dude when I don't like a politician and they do something good. I don't care that I don't like them. I'll tell you that they did something good. In fact, I pride myself on that fact. So, for example, my distaste of Joe Biden is very well known and very well documented to anybody who's followed this show for an extended period of time. But when Joe Biden fully pulled out of Afghanistan, I said, this is a good thing. Now, he was getting dogpiled by elite media over that, and I didn't see many lefties come to his defense. And I think that is incredibly hacky because we've been saying for the longest time we want somebody to fully pull out of Afghanistan. Then he does that, and then you hear crickets. Now, it also is the case that he did a horrendous war crime drone strike that killed innocent civilians, and I pointed that out as well because, again, you have to be intellectually honest. That has to come before any ideological concerns or any personal gripes. Another thing that I brought up on this show and continue to bring up on this show, which I don't see any other lefty commentators do, is that Joe Biden signed an executive order to raise the minimum wage for every single federal government employee and every single federal government contractor, which applies to over 400,000 people, and it was a $15 minimum wage. Now, he also failed to get it into the last reconciliation bill, which was a colossal failure, but you have to point out both those things because both those things are true. I thought Joe Biden was not in favor of the $15 minimum wage. I thought he was honestly lying about that every step of the way. He did that weird hostage video with Bernie where Bernie was like, well, Joe, do you support the $15 an hour minimum wage? And Biden was half asleep and a zombie like, yeah, Bernie, well, I do. What are we talking about again? And I was like, this dude doesn't support a $15 an hour minimum wage. I was wrong. He signed an executive order to raise the federal government minimum wage to $15 an hour. Now, again, he has no idea how to fight because he's weak, so he wasn't able to get into the reconciliation bill. But you have to talk about both those things because within the nuance of that and the complexity of that lies the truth. And a lot of people pretend to be truth tellers, then they don't tell you the whole truth. So I tell you all of that to tell you this. The question has now come up. Is Joe Biden getting rolled and giving away the farm in this $3.5 trillion reconciliation negotiation? And it ain't looking good, folks. So let me give you the update here. This is from Manu Raju of CNN. They're looking at community college scholarships. Also, Medicare expansion is still on the table, as is universal pre-K and ACA funding. That's Obamacare funding. Dems had discussed with Biden $300 billion for climate change measures, but it's not clear how that shakes out. Price tag around $2 trillion. Okay, so you read that and you say community college sort of being stripped out is bad, but all in all, not terrible. Well, now it gets terrible. New, Biden told House progressives tuition-free community college is out of the package per multiple sources. Child tax credit won't go as far as some would like. Likely a 1-year extension as opposed to a 10 or a 5. Home health care likely less than $250 billion. Dems had wanted $400 billion. Climate change, still a debate. But we're not done yet. Jeff Stein says, White House comes down again. Intense fears among many Dems right now. They'll get a medley of largely temporary half measures. And then it says news per 4 sources. 4. Biden floats a slightly smaller $1.75 trillion to $1.9 trillion package to House progressives, plus just a 1-year extension of the child tax credit. So, if you've been following along, the left-wing position was about $10 trillion. Biden wanted $6 trillion. There was the reconciliation package negotiation behind the scenes for which Bernie played a pivotal role. He was able to get us a $3.5 trillion bill. Now, if that bill passed in its entirety, it would have been wonderful. However, I'm not a bullshitter, so I'm not going to lie to you and say that that really had a chance of getting through. But what I've told you guys from the beginning is absolute bare minimum complete floor would be what? $2 trillion. And again, this is my personal reading of the situation, what I think is gettable and what I think is sufficient. $2 trillion floor, absolute floor, no climate, no deal, and absolutely no means testing in the bill. Well, guess what? It's failing the most basic of the basic litmus tests. Now we're talking about 1.75 to 1.9 trillion, and just so everybody understands, whenever it's presented as this or this, it is 100% of the time the lower number. So it's a $1.75 trillion bill we're talking about, and we're told Biden is now trying to sell progressives on that behind the scenes. Here's my answer on this front. Hell no. Hell no. Not in a million years. I'd vote no, and I'd vote no with a smile on my face. Here's the thing that drives me crazy. If I got the sense that there was an adequate plan behind the scenes from Joe Biden, if I got the sense they were truly negotiating in a way that's even mildly sufficient, then it'd be easier to swallow some of these sour-ass pills. But you and I both know that's not what's happening. And you and I both know Biden probably doesn't really care about the specifics in this reconciliation bill. Biden, my guess is, wants the original $1 or $1.5 trillion infrastructure bill that already passed the Senate. He wants that to pass because a lot of that is a corporate giveaway, by the way, with some really good provisions about updating our infrastructure and things of that nature, traditional infrastructure. He wants that package, and then I don't think he cares if the next package is $1 trillion. I don't think he cares. Because he just wants to say, in a similar way to what Obama did, I got something passed, now get off my ass. He wants to be able to pat himself on the back and say, I'm the great unifier. I told you I could get these Republicans to come along, and I told you, I could get something done. Well, here it is. Well, in the case of Obama, you got Obamacare done, which was a giant giveaway to the health insurance companies, which kept the for-profit health insurance companies in the driver's seat, which made them phenomenally wealthy and didn't even give all Americans health care. It was a Heritage Foundation plan, which is a right-wing think tank. That's what Obama got done. But he went out there and said, look, I'm the great deal maker. By the way, the great deal maker, even though not a single Republican voted for Obamacare. And it's probably going to be the same thing with this. No matter how small the reconciliation bill is, no Republican's going to go vote for it anyway. So you're not some sort of great bipartisan deal maker. You're, trying to put together a coalition of just the people in your own party, and you're letting President Sinema and VP Manchin control the terms of the entire debate. And at this point, I have no doubt that what's going on behind the scenes is they're the ones who are throwing jabs and throwing hooks and throwing uppercuts, and it's Joe Biden who's on the defensive and compromising on the compromise of the compromise of the compromise. And that's totally unacceptable. And what progressives need to understand is, if you go along with this, nobody will ever take you seriously ever again, and they'd be correct to do that. They'd be correct. Now, early on in this process, progressives did the right thing when there was an attempt to de-link the human infrastructure bill from the traditional infrastructure bill. They said, hell no, we're going to vote as a block. Well, now this is another test. Like I said, I could accept a deal of $2 trillion or more, but there has to be climate stuff in there, and there has to be no means testing. What we're looking at now is a bill that is very likely under the $2 trillion number. Means testing is 50-50 as to whether or not it'll be in there. Hopefully, it's not. And it looks like the climate stuff is so incredibly inadequate that it's laughable. And again, this is what happens when you have Joe Manchin as the head of the committee that's going to determine the climate stuff. So what do you do? Well, I don't know how many times I could give you guys the basic formula here, but I'm going to do it again because apparently I'm the only person saying it. You have leverage over Manchin and Sinema. You do. Particularly over Manchin. You have a tremendous amount of leverage. Why? Because Joe Manchin is part of a crime family. We just got leaks, emails from Joe Manchin's daughter, who works for a pharmaceutical company, I believe called Mylan, and she was part of the EpiPen price-fixing, price gouging scandal. They have her on email saying, how do we rationalize jacking up prices to make more money? So she's a criminal. You have her dead to rights. Joe Manchin, in that great article from The Intercept, Joe Manchin's Dirty Empire, he's pulling in millions and millions of dollars from dirty energy. He gets like $500K a year, more than his salary as a senator, which is about $180,000, from the dirtiest coal plant in West Virginia. His wife is also involved in the price-fixing scandal. You have them committing real crimes. So if you're Joe Biden, You have to use that leverage. You have to tell Joe Manchin, Joe, I don't want to do it, but if you don't vote for the legislation, I'm going to have Merrick Garland, the DOJ, look into your family, and you're going to go down. Because as everybody understands, by the time there's a federal case against you, they got you. You're dunskies. So you have to tell Joe Manchin, look, it's this or that. It's carrot or stick. It's, to steal a phrase from Malcolm X, the ballot or the bullet. Well, it doesn't really fit, but you get the point. It's, you vote the right way, and you get some perks. I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse. If you vote the right way, I'll give you another military base in West Virginia. I'll give you extra infrastructure money. I'll give whoever in your family, you want a job in my administration? Do you want a job in my administration? You're going to get it. I'll give you whatever you want. But if you vote against it, somebody in your family is going to prison. And it might be you, but it'll probably be your daughter. Now, that's hard-ass politics. That's mafia boss shit. But it is also, I have no doubt, exactly what Lyndon B. Johnson would have done or FDR would have done. It's what they would have done. So you don't really want it unless you do that, unless you get to that point. You don't care unless you get to that point. Now, if you want to hold hands and sing Kumbaya, okay, hold hands and sing Kumbaya. But then you're going to get a package that's wildly insufficient. And the other thing is, this is a point that I read last night. I thought it was a wonderful point. Dems would actually be better off if you're going to have a package that's small. That's like 1.75 trillion or whatever. You would be better off picking two big programs and fully funding them in a universal sense for 10 years, as opposed to this piecemeal approach where it's a bunch of little half measures. But there's a reason why they can't do that, which is the political reality that you can't hold together the coalition unless people get the little things that they care about. The senators get the little things that they care about, and the senators care about different things. So, you can't do, let's say, universal pre-K for the entire country for 10 years and free college for the entire country for 10 years. And because then the people who are in it for elder care or the people who are in it for the child tax credit, they don't get the thing that they want, and so the coalition falls apart. So you're really holding it together with duct tape and bubblegum at that point, so you can't do that approach, even though that approach would politically help way more. But look at where we are now. Look at where we stand. Joe Manchin is in the driver's seat, even though Biden has leverage to use on him. And Kyrsten Sinema, now she's the one who's really the wild card, because as I've told you, I'm not convinced she wants to stay in D.C. She very well may have plans of leaving and going to work as a soulless lobbyist for some mega corporation that's going to pay her $2 million a year to sit on her ass. And if that's the case, what leverage can you use when she's out no matter what you do? You can't force her to do something if she doesn't have, re-election hopes. So you just have to hope that she's not already planning on ditching D.C. And honestly, it's a 50-50 question. I don't know. Maybe she does want to stay. Maybe she doesn't. I don't know. Some actions indicate she wants to leave. But also, politicians rarely want to give up power. I mean, Dianne Feinstein is 1,000 years old and literally losing her mind, and she's in there. Chuck Grassley's 90 years old, and he wants to run for re-election. So I don't know, but you still have to try to play hardball with her. You still have to try the carrot or stick approach with her. You still have to do the mafia boss shit with her, too. You still have to let her know, I'll give you what you want if you do the right thing. If you don't, here are going to be the punishments. Here are going to be the consequences. You're never going to have a job in D.C. again. Joe Biden, will personally call the heads of all the corporations and say, don't give her a job if she leaves. You're the president of the United States. You have tremendous power. You can flex it. So it looks like at the last minute, Joe Biden is giving away the farm. And if these are the terms of the deal, then I say hell no. Now, even if you play hardball, and this is where, I change the conversation and I'm talking to my friends on the left. Even if you play the hardball, you might only be able to get a $2.5 trillion deal. But $2.5 trillion is doable as long as there's climate in there and there's no means testing in there. And it's acceptable, and I would vote for it. But now we're talking about $1.75 trillion giving away the farm, and it's honestly a joke of a bill. So this is my message to progressive lawmakers is, don't vote for this one. If these are the terms of the deal, no way. If you played hardball, maybe if Joe Biden did the right thing and approached this the right way, there is a 20 or 30% chance he could have gotten them on $3.5 trillion. I'm not naive. I know it's still not likely, even if he played politics the right way. But definitely if you play politics the right way, I think you could get him on $2 trillion or more, 2.5 trillion, maybe 2.9 trillion. But he's not doing it the right way, which is pathetic because what we have right now is a transformational moment in American history, and we have a status quo incrementalism president. And it's just not going to cut it. And the Democrats are looking like they're going to get absolutely clobbered in the midterms. So even for just political reasons, not policy reasons, but political reasons, even for political reasons, you have to try to save your own ass and throw a Hail Mary pass here and do something that's going to massively increase your approval rating, which right now is down in the dumps. So we could have had a phenomenal bill, but it looks like Joe Biden is ultimately going to be Joe Biden. So now it's on the left to stand up and vote it down. Vote it down. You got to do what you got to do. I don't see any other way to handle this. You can't every single time there's a negotiation and there's a bill accept crumbs of the crumbs of the crumbs because you're never going to be taken seriously. And at least if you flex muscle now, people understand really you're in the driver's seat. Because there's only, literally for this bill, there's only two hard-ass, basically Republican-light Democrats. So if there's two of them in the Senate, well, guess what? Let's say we have a dozen progressives in the House who are willing to flex their power even more. That sends a message, and it sends a message that there's more of us and you're going to have to reckon with us. And now the deals are on our terms, son. So there you have it. Obviously, I still have my fingers crossed. I hope the reporting is wrong, or I hope somehow can be over $2 trillion, but it doesn't look good at the moment. And if it doesn't look good and you're a progressive lawmaker, there's only one thing left to do, and they better have the balls to do it. And just the final reminder of what was in the original $3.5 trillion package, which there was a chance you could get if you knew what you were doing politically behind the scenes in the negotiation. The original bill had child tax benefit, universal pre-K, paid family leave, paid medical leave, tuition-free community college, lower prescription drug costs, dental, hearing, and vision Medicare expansion, housing, home care, major climate money, immigration, lower Medicare age, Obamacare expansion, and then increased taxes on the wealthy, not just raising the income tax, but also was taxing corporation and fees on polluters and negotiating Medicare. So what could have been if FDR was sitting in that White House or LBJ was sitting in that White House or a half-competent, president who really cared about this stuff was in the White House. But unfortunately, we have a half-asleep zombie who's willing to take the incrementalism on top of the incrementalism within the incrementalism. And here we are.